All right, so necessary is the word that we are talking about today. I think when we think of the word necessary, we're usually thinking of maybe like the least amount of work that we can do, like what's necessary to pass this quiz, or what's necessary to pass this test. Or like those videos, it's like, was that necessary? And so necessary has so many meanings, but today we're going to look at how we can apply that to our Think More series. So today I want to challenge you to truly think about what's necessary for you to do your more. What can you do to make others better? What's your part to play? Will you rise to the occasion? But this idea of necessary is something that we really have to wrap our minds around, because what's necessary leads to growth. It's something that starts small and it becomes something more. Doing what's necessary is just that little tiny thing you have to do, and then over time, it leads to greater and better things. For instance, there's a saying in Hinduism talking about how that necessary leads to what's possible, and then what's possible leads to the impossible. So what's necessary leads to possible, and then the possible leads to impossible. For instance, how many of you guys have ever had like a sports injury before? Yeah, sports injury. Yeah, student athletes. Hashtag. Yeah. But sometimes when we have that injury, sometimes it's necessary to stretch and do rehab. And a lot of the times, doctors will recommend doing yoga or other types of things to be able to get you back to where you need to be. But for instance, if you commit yourself eventually to yoga, you're going to find yourself being able to do stretches that you couldn't even do before you had the injury. So what's necessary, the stretching, led to what's possible and gave you the ability to do something that you at one time thought was impossible. How about let's break it down to something that happens every day. Who's had their feelings hurt today? We can be honest. This is a safe place. All right, just this row. So I don't know who you guys are hanging out with or if you're just hurting each other's feelings, but maybe you need to start hanging out with different people. But after apologizing, it's necessary to apologize. After apologizing, we tend to empathize with others better, meaning we understand where they're coming from better, or we start thinking about them in different ways. So if we commit ourselves to diligently thinking about others, eventually we'll reach the impossible of actually being able to put others' needs before our own. That's something that we might think is impossible now. How many of you guys don't like your job? You guys have a job? Okay, everybody loves your job. There's some people that don't. Usually, it's either because it's kind of boring or you have a boss that's really mean to you or is unfair to you or you just don't like. Maybe it's a family member or something. Yeah. So at times, it's necessary to stop complaining about your boss, right? Sometimes it's like, okay, I need to not disobey my boss. I need to respect my boss. But if we commit ourselves to not complaining, eventually we can get to the point where maybe that person just doesn't even bother us at all because it's not part of our thought process. So we see that how we choose things that are necessary, and over time, they create spaces where we're able to do things that we thought were impossible. The best singers, dancers, soccer players, whatever, they start with what's necessary. They start with what's small, and they don't become great overnight. It's through diligently applying what's necessary so that the possible becomes impossible. Because what's necessary turns ordinary into extraordinary. What's necessary turns ordinary into extraordinary. So doing what's necessary can catapult you from doing just ordinary things to extraordinary things, especially in times of crisis. And if you guys haven't experienced a time of crisis in your life, believe me, the real world is about to be dropped on you if you are graduating soon. So college will do that to you. Real life will drop that to you. Even just growing up into puberty. There's lots of things that happen where we're faced with numerable crises. Crises, maybe is the plural. Yeah, so there are tons of stories, tons of inspirational stories of people responding to terrorism, which is a great crisis. It's not a great crisis, but it's a crisis that happens. There's a movie coming out called 1517 to Paris. I don't know if you guys have seen the previews for that. Yeah, it's a movie directed by Clint Eastwood that actually features the real-life guys that dealt with this terrorist on this train. And so they were just kind of hanging out on the train. They weren't really like on duty. They weren't really in the mindset. But yet they rose to the occasion to protect everybody else on the plane or on the train. And then there's a sadder movie coming out called, or it already came out a long time ago, called United 93. I don't know if you guys have seen this. But it deals with 9/11. And one of the planes that was actually supposed to crash into the White House, it was one of the last planes to be able to do that. It was after the towers had already been hit. And there were people on the plane that were getting phone calls or emails from their loved ones saying and realizing all these things that were happening. And so they were able to stand up and take the plane over, and they crashed it into a field rather than crashing it into the White House. So times of crisis kind of turn us into superheroes in a way. And in an everyday aspect, our human body is capable of so much. Like a lot of times we just use our body to do necessary things when really we could be doing extraordinary things. There actually are everyday superpowers out there. Some of you guys actually might have superpowers and not even realize it. Yeah, your body is capable of at least 3 superpowers that I know of. Number 1 is superhuman strength. There are times we hear the stories of like the mom who like saves her child from the van, like backing over her, or like somebody crushed under there, they're able to lift the van. There's times where we can summon superhuman strength. So science shows that in times of crisis, your body can shut down some functions and redirect the energy to other things. And so it's just kind of a moment of superhero strength, but we're able to have it. So our body allows us to do amazing things through realizing what's necessary. Another one is superhuman memory. There's times of crisis where our brains can work fast to recall information from the past that's vital to the present. Maybe you guys experienced this when you didn't study for a quiz, and then all of a sudden you're taking the quiz and you're like, whoa, I remember my teacher told me this, and you're like, life's flashing before your eyes. But most of the time it happens like in war. For soldiers in war, they have to remember their training, and there's a lot of things that they do, and sometimes it comes back to them. Superhuman memory. And the last one that we are capable of, superhuman immunity. Here's what I mean by that. When trauma happens to us, sometimes we actually don't feel the pain right away. Like for instance, I was actually hit by a car once when I was riding my bike. I was kind of being dumb because I was on the wrong side of the road, and so they were turning out of a parking lot and they hit me. So definitely always ride your bike on the right side of the road. But I got hit by the car, and I was like, I feel fine. And my bike was totally messed up, but like I feel fine. But it wasn't until like hours later that I actually felt the pain. So your body gives you adrenaline, and you're able to get yourself to safety, or at least to get to a place where you can prevent further damage. So we're capable of so much more than we realize. When we understand by doing what's necessary, we can do what's possible, and then we can unlock the impossible. So remembering that these things help us remember how we can turn ordinary into extraordinary when it's necessary at our times. So when we apply this to our relationships, when we apply this to our achievements in life, we have to think first about what is necessary. What part can I play? What can I do? Because doing what's necessary isn't really about you. It's about others. When you grow, you're not just helping yourself grow, you're helping others grow. When we respond in crisis, we can save other people's lives, because necessary isn't about just getting by. It's about changing your world. Peace out.